I'm ready.
All right, let's see. I think we are live. We are just getting situated. Those that are joining us now, welcome. We are just sharing this to our pages. And I am also going to edit the title, because for those of you that share this interview on your page, you will get a chance to win Sheridan's workshop,
Ooh.
which is happening next week, which we will talk about at the end of the conversation. But I don't know if I can edit it right now. So we'll just keep talking about that, you guys. That's what's happening. The magic has already begun. So welcome, everyone. My name is Yogi Raven. I'm the creator and host of Souls Into It and this interview with the lovely, amazing, and talented Sheridan Semple. Sheridan, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me. I've been like so excited to do this interview with you. So yay.
I know, me too. We have so much to talk about. But before we do, I wanted to introduce you to everybody. So where did your page go? There we go. So let me describe to you who Sheridan is. Let's see, I'm looking for your about. Sheridan grew up in the mountains of Aspen, where she discovered her love for the outdoors and how women can be inspired by nature. By trade, she is a shamanic astrologer, a medicinal aromatherapist, a holistic health practitioner. She is a clinical aromatherapist. You guys, she has so many acronyms behind her name. She is a clinical nutritionist and a clinical herbalist. I mean, you couldn't be more just ready from all angles to serve. She uses her experience with the physical, emotional, and spiritual realms to teach women how to find themselves, their path, and to connect with their soul's original intent for coming here at this lifetime, to really, truly remember. And that is so amazing, and what a beautiful mission. And so everyone, welcome to Sheridan. Let's begin. Why don't we start off with your story, Sheridan? How did you get started with, let's start off with, where do you recall when you unplugged your intuition, and tell us the story about how you reconnected back with it and brought you to where you're at today.
Well, as I'm sure, you and everybody watching is well aware of, it's an unfolding, it's a process, right? So I would say there's like unplugs that happened at various times, but one of the biggest ones looking back, I didn't necessarily have an awareness of it at the time, but in retrospect, it's like, oh, I can see that's one of the big first unplugs is when I was little, we moved to Aspen when I was like, a small kid. And I had just come from like some serious heavy trauma with my dad, like getting molested and being abused and just really shut down, right? And I moved to live with my mom here in Aspen. And we lived at the time, like in the condo that was like the highest up on Aspen Mountain. So literally Aspen Mountain was my backyard. And I just started walking up there like every day, during the summer, after school, sledding, after, the lifts closed. And that's where it really started, because I started communing with the earth to heal me. And I didn't even know, I wasn't aware of that, at 7, 8 years old, but I just kept going every day. And it just kept bringing me like back to myself, healing me, right? It's like I often will say the earth healed me, and I feel like it can do that for all of us on so many different levels. But that was really one of the first places where I started to be able to connect back to me, which is really what I think intuition is so much, is just connecting back to ourselves, who we really are, trusting ourselves, trusting our knowings, our connection, all of that. And that place, I think, sent me in a totally different trajectory than if I had not, um, moved here and had the mountains as like my mother to heal me, So that's the big first place.
Yeah, and I love that. I think, for those of you that are watching, can you relate? Have you had a story with feeling like you were receiving healing from a traumatic situation through connecting with Mother Earth, through connecting with the elements in some way, shape, or form? I can I don't think I'll ever forget this one time when I was a child. For whatever reason, I didn't feel like I could communicate whatever it was that was on my mind and in my heart. And I was feeling really separated from family. I was feeling very alone and isolated. And I remember the window being open, and it felt, I recall it being like a summer evening. And as I was crying, it was like I was crying so hard. The only thing that like tripped me out of the way that I was feeling was hearing the rain. And it was as if the rain was trying to get my attention, and it calmed me. And it felt as if there was this like intercommunication that was happening. And I experienced that, I continue to throughout my life, but that was such a big moment of remembrance for me.
That's so powerful. I mean, the earth, I think honestly, this is the filter that I look at things through, but it's like, I think that coming back into communion with the earth is like the answer to everything, essentially, right? We're so disconnected from it, right? Like it's weird to trust your intuition or to be like psychic or to be a channel, right? These things in our society are like weird, right? It's like we haven't been raised, the vast majority of us, to be in communion with the earth, which is the place where we knew where we were, and the stories that were told, and that would be cultivated in more indigenous cultures and ancestrally, which is in our DNA much longer than this more anomaly of where we're disconnected from things, is a much shorter amount of time. And I feel like my mission in my heart of hearts is that path back to the earth is the place that we know ourselves and we can trust ourselves. It's like, I remember one of the first times I like sat in meditation with like the trees or the plants, I just sobbed, right? It was like, oh my God, the love that the earth has to pour out to you, right? Like in the rain, whatever it is, however you're connecting, is so vast. If you just can open your heart, it's like the true unconditional love of healing that goes so beyond anything else. And it's so profound, and it just fills you up, and it lets you know who you are and where you're at, right? That's why I like using the spiritual aromatherapy so much, because it's like, you're connecting to the plant, the spirit, the essence, the deva of the plant. And that raises your vibration and opens your heart and brings you into alignment with the earth, which is who you really are, who we really are. And you can't help but start to trust yourself more and heal things and start to hear things or see more things, or, you get back connected to that ancestral place that we've all lived in before.
Mm. Yeah, as you were saying that, I heard the word invocation. Like you invoke that frequency of, the essence of that the power of the plant, or the power of, what that deva brings, and you embody it. You allow yourself to invoke, just like a chant, right? a mantra over and over again, except you get to just wear it and smell it and breathe it in. And
yeah, and you're like reminded, right? You turn and you smell it. You're like, oh yeah, this is the path I'm on. This is what I'm doing with this, right? And the spirit of the plant just holds and helps you to get there, right? Because the earth wants us to be connected to her and in communion with her, right? We can't abuse her if we're in communion with her. You know, it's like all indigenous people, you know, and science will say the way indigenous people have known the healing power of plants, whether you're using them as like herbs or essences or infusions, whatever, however you're connecting to the earth through the plant medicine, they would say, science would say, it was done through trial and error. That's how they learned the healing properties of these plants. But any indigenous culture that has a written history, all right, 100% say the plants taught them what they do and what they're good for, right? They were in communion with the plants and the minerals and the stones and the cycles and the seasons, and you know, when the summer solstice was coming and where Venus was in the sky and the cycle that the moon is in, and you know, all of that, right? They were at one with all of it as a culture and as an individual. And that level of spiritual connection is, we can't even totally really imagine it because we just don't live in that type of situation anymore, right? But here we are, like in your group, we're trying to cultivate and get back to that. And that's why I think it's so important and so beautiful, because you've got to have a place where it's like, it's not weird, right? It's okay to be you and connect into these pieces, because that's how we actually make a difference and change and heal the place that we're in as a society, is through everybody tuning back in. And that's the beauty, I think, of what you're providing. You know, I mean, that's it right there in a nutshell, right? There's so many more things to it, but that's huge. So kudos
thank
to you.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And I mean, I think that that's another reason why this group is growing so much, is because everybody's looking for a place like this, where we're looking for a place to not feel weird and to feel a part of something, where it's encouraged to be seen in that way. It's encouraged to explore these parts of us. And I love what you said, that, you know, intuition is getting into a place of knowing who you are, because I can relate to that 100%. The more that I've trusted in the information that comes through, the more that I'm in confident with, hi, Christine Marie, she's saying hello. The more I'm
Hello.
confident,
Mhm.
yeah, with where I'm being led, and that in a place, like, we're all, you know, creatures of habit. We don't like to feel out of control, and when in fact really we have no control over anything, you know, hence the fire that's happening up by Sheridan and I. We have no control, you know, there's only so much that we can do, and we have to trust in that gut instinct. We have to trust in where we're being led.
Totally. Someone once said to me, it's a practice of leading a guided life, right? So it's like in every moment, in a way that it can be practiced, I think, is in each moment, like silly things like, do I want to have a sandwich or like soup and salad right now? You know, and it's like, okay, well, which thing makes my heart feel more open and expanded, and which thing makes me feel more closed? Like in the most subtle ways, right? Does the sandwich make me feel open? Then choose the sandwich. Okay. And then now I'm going back to work. And what's the next thing? You know, which path should I take walking back to work? This way makes me feel open. This way makes me feel closed. Okay. Keep choosing, even if you just have the little teeniest sensation of like, this feels slightly more open and this feels slightly more closed. Okay. I'm going to keep making that choice. And right, it's like you said, it like fills you up with who you are. And like, it it puts your life into like bigger hands than just like your little brain up here, right? And it's so connecting, deepening, rewarding. I mean, it's just like you said, boosting your confidence and the ability to hear and listen in those bigger decisions gets easier and bigger because you've been practicing on these like little silly things like, do I want water right now or juice? Or, I mean, like just the little like micro things, but you can use your intuition in everything and it just grows and gets stronger.
It does. And I want to talk about that. How did it grow and become stronger for you? Where was that? Where were you led? I believe that we all have a spiritual contract and we have some, a soul blueprint, which is kind of veering into the direction of shamanic astrology. And so looking at your chart, looking at how your life is unfolded and then what your chart actually says, let's talk about that. Let's dive into that. Like, it's so interesting. We're talking about how life is so uncertain. We need to be led by our intuition, but yet there's also this like kind of an outline of a blueprint that's saying, hey, these things have been on purpose in your life.
Totally.
Not been on accident.
Right. Yeah. And like one of the things I love doing, like looking at the chart, right? Like looking at my chart is how it started for me and how I could start to understand things. But it's like when I look at my chart and my experience, right? What I shared before, like being molested, being abused, right? These intense things that so many people share in common with me, right? I'm not the only one at all. And at first it's so intense and so gnarly and painful. And it ultimately is like one of the things that I think keeps motivating us to heal, right? Because it's like the place I'm in is so unbearable. There has to be a better place. So you just keep searching and finding, right? And I think coming back to yourself and your intuition is one of the places that really brings the most healing. But like looking at my chart, so in shamanic astrology, we look at the birth chart as your soul's evolutionary intent for this lifetime, right? So the chart is this like snapshot map of where the solar system was at the moment of your birth, where the sun and Venus and all these things. And we don't say where that was like doing something to you or making you a certain way. We say it shows an intent. This is the energy you were born into when you took your first breath, and it shows an intent of how your soul wants to evolve in this lifetime, right? So right there, that starts to take some of that pressure out of like the abuse and the intensity, because it's like, okay, if this is like part of my evolutionary path, then I can kind of get behind it. And how do I kind of get on board and help this process? So like for me, we look at like the moon is really like your lineage and where you've come from and your expertise, and you're bringing it into the places of like what's your Venus and your Mars and your sun and ultimately your ascendant, right? So for me, it's like my moon is in Virgo, which is all about having a deep communion with the earth, right? So in the things I've shared, that you can see, right? So that's like something I already know. We could say that it's something I've been doing for lifetimes and studying and learning and that type of thing. And so I take that expertise and I bring into these newer parts of my chart, which are more like Cancer. So it's like now I want to take that earth knowledge, that communion, that place, and bring it like to the people, right? To my village to express that, right? And on my chart, so many things are what we consider in the underworld. So, without going into like a bunch of like astrology speak about things, but it's like there's a lot of, the heavy abuse, my whole path is through the underworld, which is more the like feeling and healing. And it's more of that shamanic type of path. And, I can really see that in what I've been through and how it gives me a framework of like, okay, it's okay, the experiences that I've had, because they're serving me until the place where now it's like, I can look at and think how much like my family, the dynamics, everything that happened really served me into the work that I do, right? So, and I don't want anyone to hear me saying like, excusing the abuse or the molestation, but it's like, it's a place of like, I can really see the gifts that that intense has given me, and I can see it really through the chart. And to ultimately, you know, what is like your life purpose, I think is so much laid out on the chart of like your experiences. It totally matches what your soul's intent is. It's just about how conscious can we get on that, interacting with it, right? And you know, rising to the occasion of it, whatever it is. And I think that's such a big part of that intuition piece, right? Because you start to feel and see how things have served you and how you can serve with that and what your gifts are. And, you know, it starts to all look pretty well laid out in hindsight, you know, even though you're wrestling with it is intense.
Yeah, and you know, as you were speaking, I just was thinking, you know, the most profound thing someone has said to me when I'm talking about something that I'm going through that is gut wrenching or difficult or traumatic is, wow, that's some big medicine. And that goes right back into like reconnecting back into what the essence of the plant and the animal kingdom is. And that if this life isn't meant for you to suffer, then it's really meant for you to succeed. And you chose this course that is going to give you specific nutrients so that you can create the most vital version of you,
Yeah.
right?
And evolve your soul, right? Which we can feel like disconnected from in some ways, right? But that's really what I think the path is. And so when you look at it from that place, it's like, okay, I can like handle this, because that's a big job, right? That's a worthy task of our soul's evolution and getting on board with that, you know? So it's powerful. I love that. That's some big medicine. I like that. Love that.
It is big medicine, and it's wisdom right behind that wound. And that's the difference, because it's two sides of the coin. You can look at it at any angle, which is what I love about what you do. And by the way, I had my own personal experience with Sheridan, and she's amazing. I just really love the way that you translate the map, you know, and you share the story of what, you know, each person, mine in particular, my soul's story was outlaying for me. And you shared it in a way that I hadn't heard, you know, you shared it in a way that made me feel like, okay, good, you know, you know, like the one thing that really stuck out was like, I think you said something about Leo. There's something Leo in my chart, but I am sure, you know, I'm constantly like afraid to put myself out there, you know? And when we look at certain charts and the way that people like translate them, sometimes it's shared in a way that it's like, this is who you are, instead of like, this is who you are striving to attain or to become, you know, instead of, because I feel like I've looked at other readings in the past, you know, where I'm just like, you know, I want to be there. Right. I want to be in that place.
Yeah. So. Because it's like you're talking about that, having that Leo rising, right? So your ascendant is Leo, which in Shamanic astrology we say is like the new school you're going to, right? So you're not going to be good at Leo. You're not going to have Leo like wired. Leo's probably going to be scary, right? Because we learn in the challenge, right? We don't learn and grow when things are like smooth sailing and easy, right? It's nice. That's a reward, but it's the challenge. And so having Leo rising, it's like the challenge is to like put yourself out there, right? And ultimately like find your own divinity, like come to the place of where like you're creator and you can like make it up as you go along, and you're like the queen, and you know, that deep self-love where you can, that it spills over to the rest of us, right? So those of us, because I have Leo rising as well, so it's like we're trying to get to that place, right? But we're not there. We're like someone who has a Leo moon, they might already be really good with that. And their path is like something different where, they have to learn about the underworld, or they have to learn about, you know, being a mother, or just all these different paths, and it's like hard, and but that's like the beauty, and that's what's so cool. And I think especially once we're aware of it, it's like, okay, then now I'm like consciously, I understand the path, and I just have to keep kind of like choosing and moving towards that, and it's what feels right, right? It's like when you hear it, it's like it's an intent, so you can either do it or not, right? It's not like set in stone, it's an intent. So do you want to kind of like get on board with the intent, or is it not there? And that's okay, right? We have free will, all choices are valid. But when you get into kind of consciously trying to co-create with what is your soul's intent, it's like that's where the magic can really start to happen, even in the hard times, because we all go through cycles that are heavy and intense, and we have to learn, and these initiation cycles. But when you're consciously connecting to it, it's like, okay, even though it's heavy, I can feel like the magic that's coming. I can feel the medicine, like you're talking about, that
I
big
can
medicine.
feel like, and I think that this is like what Carolyn Miss talks about confidence. Like nobody's born with confidence. Confidence is earned. And like, knowing that about me, because I have so many stories of rejection and fear of putting myself out there, even though I'm not perceived in that way. If somebody wouldn't assume that, I'm constantly having to like butt up against that feeling of fear that I'm going to be, no one's going to like me. I'm not helping anyone. Everyone's going to tell me to shut up, like, and I know I'm not alone. This is exactly what everybody is going through in their own way, in their own right. Like I'm never going to become a surgeon. I do not want to be a nurse, like there are certain things about us that you pull out in people's charts that share like, look, you are naturally very interested in these things, like it just says it all over the place. And you're like,
Yeah,
that place of remembrance of like, this is why I'm here. This is not on accident.
totally. I feel like my job, like I feel like I literally have the greatest job in the world, because I feel like my job is just to like validate you on who you already really know you are, right? And then we just have to figure out like the nuances and the tweaks of like, oh, I'm not quite like connecting to this piece, but I can feel it, right? I know that's right. I've been thinking it, but I'm afraid to do this, or so it's like, I mean, oh my God, that's so cool that that's what I get to do. And one thing that you just said, I want to like make sure everybody watching pays attention to, that even Raven, who's like leading this group and is this incredible intuitive healer, right? She's walking your talk, still has moments of like doubt. Is this okay? Is this right? So like when you're going through that, we all go through that. So there's never a place where it's like, as you're practicing with your intuition, you just totally arrive and you're like, I totally got this, right? Because we live in a time where it's like that's a foreign thing, right? So it's like, so just know that even like the greatest spiritual teachers in the whole world still have like the doubt and the questioning, and oh my gosh, I'm totally disconnected, I don't know, and then you come back to it. So it's like it's a process for all of us, all the time, all the way through until the day we die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are all faking it. We all are. And I just want to know, those that are watching, can you relate to our story? Can you relate to that place of like, and that I feel like that's that place where you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to put yourself out there in that way because you really don't want to. I
Yeah.
always say do the things you don't want to do the most.
Right.
Because that's the most medicine, right?
The scariest. Yes, totally. Right. It's yeah, and like trust your your intuition, right? That's like the biggest thing, I think, you know? It's like you just have to be able to trust yourself, and your path just doesn't look like anyone else's. That's one of the things I love about shamanic astrology as well, is that it's like all paths are totally valid and equal, even if we don't get it, right? Like the person we work with that drives us insane, and we're like, oh my gosh, why would they ever make that choice, right? We live in a world of such huge polarity right now, but it's like every single person has, their soul has a very valid intent evolutionary path, and you can really see it in the chart. And then it's just helped me like stop being judgmental, because like I just don't know, and I'm going to trust that like your soul is taking you on the path that you need to go on, and who the hell am I to think that like you should be doing it differently? What a joke, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Stay out of it. Stay in your lane is what I like to call it.
Oh, I like
Just
that.
stay in your just head. Like you got the horse
Yeah.
going on.
Those
Can't
blind.
see anything
Yeah.
else. Just keep looking forward, focusing on what you want to do and need to do and what feels right for you.
Yeah.
We've got Kimberly Moran. Hello, she's saying. And then Christine says the hardest choices to make are the ones most needed. And, I kind of want to touch upon this because I feel like I get a lot of people, and maybe you guys can relate that are watching. There's this afraid I'm going to screw it up, afraid I'm going to make the wrong decision. And it's like even in the chart, you just can't really screw it up, anything up. There's nothing
Totally.
to screw up.
Yeah. No, totally, right? I like teach these medicinal aromatherapy certification courses, and I'll be like, just intuitively pick an essence that you're going to anoint yourself with, and people like labor over it, and I'm like, you can't pick the wrong one, I swear to God. Like, pick one, pick another one, pick another one. You cannot pick the wrong one, or they have to write a paper, and like they'll labor over, oh my gosh, well, which one should I pick? And it has to be perfect, 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 right? And it's like, I'm just telling you, whatever one you pick, it's going to be perfect, right? It's just like, yeah, you cannot make an error in these realms. Even if you feel like in hindsight it was a mistake, it's like you said, it's like there's the medicine, right? There still wasn't a mistake, because it's like helping you get to the place you are now. So it's yeah, fear can really hold us back, and it's a natural part of life as well, so it's like, the fear of making the wrong choice can be scary, but still can't screw it up. Even if you don't make a choice, you still aren't screwing it up.
You're still making a choice too.
Yeah.
But Christine Marie says, afraid of wrong choice or afraid of the discomfort of change, no matter how much you know you need to change. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well said, Christine. That's so much it, right? That's so well said. Yeah.
And if you guys have any questions that you want to ask about shamanic astrology, if you want to ask anything about spiritual aromatherapy, I would love to know, Sheridan, what got you specifically in shamanic astrology and not Western, not Eastern? What was it that made you specifically? I mean, I probably could assume because of the whole connection with your chart and nature and all that things, but where did
I really studied astrology a lot, like all through high school and college, and then I kind of got away from it for a while. And I just had this intuitive hit one day on a walk by the river. I was like, ooh, I need to start studying astrology again. And so I started really looking at different places. I was already well into the world of spiritual aromatherapy, and I was using that a lot as a holistic health practitioner in my practice. And so when I landed on shamanic astrology, that a client of mine just happened to walk in and say, like, you should check this out. And I was like, oh, okay. And, all those serendipitous moments. And what really resonated for me is because with the spiritual aromatherapy, it's so much about that communion with the earth, with the plant spirit medicine, right? I felt like what shamanic astrology gave me was the other half, right? It was like I've been doing the earth part, but now this gave me the sky part from the same place, right? So it's not about, sitting down at a computer or even an ephemeris and like looking where the planets are. It's about going outside at night and communing with the spirits of the sky and the energy and knowing where things are and developing your own relationship with it. So that's where there's that shamanic piece, right? Of being able to go directly to the other world for the teaching, right? Not just book learning or having a teacher, which obviously is still a part of it. But that's the thing that really turned me on, is I was like, ooh, this is what I'm already doing with the earth. Now this just takes me to the sky, which I wasn't focused on at all. It wasn't even like on my radar, and then it felt like it brought everything into communion, because that ancestral piece we talked about at the beginning, they were communing with the earth and the sky simultaneously, right? They were communing with the whole universe all at once, not just one part of it, one half of it.
Mm. I love that. And I have a question for those that are watching. Do you guys stargaze? Is that important to you? How often do you look up at the sky? I think that's a really great point. A lot of people are so focused on what's happening in the world, in their homes, in their, physical existence, but we don't really take a moment to go outside and look up.
Yeah. I mean, most of us don't necessarily even know like what phase of the moon we're in necessarily, which is something you can see every day, or what, and then not even know at all where like Venus is. I mean, I was totally like that. I mean, I might have been paying attention to like the new moon and the full moon and sometimes some ceremony or things, but not anything consistent until I really came into shamanic astrology. And it's like, now I know where Venus and Mars, and I can go out, and Jupiter and Saturn. I had to go to Oklahoma for a funeral. My aunt Sheridan just passed away. So I was down there last week, and we were sitting outside having dinner, and I was like, oh, look, there's Jupiter, and my aunts and my cousins were like, oh my gosh, how do you know that? And I was like, in Saturn. And they were like, wait, how do you know that's Jupiter? And I was like, yeah, okay, I like know these things now. I've been watching and paying attention, and it makes you feel, the energy that's going on so much right now, right? Of like Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter all traveling together this whole year is so much about the intent of what we're going through right now. And it's like being able to be out there, even though you can't see Pluto with the naked eye, you can see Jupiter and Saturn and the dance of how they move and go retrograde and interact together. And it like helps give you that context for what we're going through, in a visual, visceral.
I'll get into that in just a second. Chris, so we have Beth. Beth says stargazing is very important. I look up several times a day. And then Christine says I stargaze every night. And that she had mentioned that in Deb's previous interview that we had, that she does CE5 meditations, which are called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, if anybody does not know that.
I did.
So what's really beautiful and interesting is that I know that a lot of Native Americans believe that we came from the stars.
Totally. Yep. The sacred hoop. Yep.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it's like just, it's a place in the sky where they say, like the ladder into the earth came, or, all of these different indigenous people will have, that's where we came from. And not to mention, I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily in indigenous cultures now that still have that feeling of like that we're like star seeds and we came from the stars, so it's a relatively prevalent concept, and there's a place where we come in through and our soul comes in, and then we leave through as well. So yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I don't know. What do you want me to say about, I don't know what else I would say about that necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Beth said that is why I made the change of taking control of my life back. And I believe, Beth, you were referring to you go and you look up at the stars and you look up at the sky, and that's what really helped you take control back in your life, which is full circle. I don't know if you were in the very beginning, but Sheridan was talking about that. She healed a lot of trauma through just being in nature. And I also share this story as well. So, thank you for sharing that. And just another person that, and even on a scientific level, I don't know if you know this, but our proprioception, which is our sense of balance, proprioception, and the balance of understanding balance, it's all focused in the ears. Mm-hmm. And it is connected to the gravitational pull of the earth. That is how we understand balance, just even from that. And then from a frequency level, right, we actually vibrate to the same megahertz as that of Mother Earth. Mm-hmm. And then from an Ayurvedic standpoint, we come from all the elements of the earth, right? Christine says, human initiated contact experiences through consciousness. Yes, I see my star family in the sky often, moving as lights through the sky. Many other kinds of contact experiences for anyone interested in learning more about CE5. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, Sheridan and I, we've both had our own experiences with some star family that we can share about. What I would love for you to share with us is if, what's going on right now? Why is there so much craziness? Like from a shamanic astrology standpoint, what is it saying?
Yeah, so basically kind of like the biggest thing of 2020, which is what I just said, is that Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto are all what you call conjunct, meaning they're just traveling right together. They're not far apart from each other. So they're kind of like going forward and retrograde, but they're just all within 10 degrees of each other throughout basically this whole year. And so that's the theme. And again, from a shamanic astrology perspective, we say it's not that this is called a stellium, these three traveling together. It's not that the stellium is doing anything to us. It's not that the stellium, Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto didn't make the pandemic happen. But what they show is an intent for this time that the pandemic is providing, okay? So, and the fire and the, George Floyd and the anti-racist protest, right? It just keeps getting bigger, right? So what happens is Saturn is what we call a middle world planet, meaning like of the real world type planet. Pluto is an underworld planet. And Jupiter is like a middle world planet too. So the shamanic idea of like there's a lower world, there's a middle world, and there's an upper world or a celestial world, right? And now we're all living in those worlds all the time, right? But they have a different kind of focus and teachings and initiation. So Saturn is really all about like what actually works and doesn't work in this real world, right? So we're seeing from the pandemic place of like all these structures are getting called into play of what's like not working is mostly what we're seeing. We're seeing some places of changes that it's more what is working, but we could say, right, we know we've been in an environmental crisis, the climate, so many things, right? We're seeing this huge polarity in like government and people, right? Everybody's like willing to like fight to the death for like their story is the right story of what's going on, right? It's just so intense. So Pluto is this underworld planet. And so when planets are together, it like lights them up, right? So Pluto is an underworld planet, which teaches through a lot of disempowerment, fear, feeling a lot of our feelings, right? So you have Saturn and Pluto together, meaning we're getting a huge intent to basically like restructure everything and look at like all the systems in a clear way but through a real like underworld intensity, shadow, scary, feeling really disempowered. The intent, of course, is never a negative place. The intent is to find new structures that work well and more empowerment around that, right? But again, we don't heal or change through the easy things. So it's like, we're all getting kind of like, we have to stay at home and think about what we did and like do our inner work. The distractions in so many ways are taken away. It's not that you can't sit at home and have a million distractions as well, but a lot of it's been removed. And, one of the most common things I hear is people are settling, right? They're being more than doing. What do I want to be doing, right? What do I want the systems and structures of my own life to look like, which goes across the collective then. And then you add Jupiter, and Jupiter basically, it's like whatever it touches, it just expands. So you think of it as it's like dropping steroid juice on the Pluto Saturn thing that's happening, right? So nobody knew it was going to be a pandemic necessarily, but people knew something big was coming in 2020 because it's unusual for these three planets to travel together like this. So it shows this, I think, amazing intent to really heal and make changes. We just have to do the work, right? I think that's the place where there's a lot of like, oh, we're creating this new earth, which is true, but we got to do the work to get there, right? It's not a switch that flips and we're there, right? Because we have to do the work to get there, And I think that's what is really being the opportunity that these planets traveling together, manifested in like a pandemic and things really getting intense is offering us.
Well, and that's amazing. And I feel like everybody that I talk to is in some very pivotal point. A lot of people that I talk to are like, this thing isn't that bad for them. Or they've lost a job and they're like being forced to look at something else, a new career, a new vocation, and like you said, a new way of doing things. If you guys can relate to that are watching, will you type a 1? If you can't relate, will you type a 2? And I do see there's some more interest in the whole star family thing, and that is more conversation is going to be happening. Love this way of looking at it. Yes, right? I can definitely relate to that. Yeah, Christine is typing a 1. Yeah. So Christine is number 2, and basically I'll just type in all of my clients that I've been working with.
And you can see too that it's like right now, like literally right now, Mars is square that stellium, right? So Mars represents the like divine masculine in the world, right? So it's like the healthy masculine, but you can see, I think a huge part of what this like these three moving together is really making us address is this like kind of patriarchal way we've been doing things. And I don't ever want any men to hear me say that being like men, right? That's not it. I don't think patriarchy's been so great for guys either, right? Nobody gets to be their true selves if like someone is suppressed and someone is not suppressed. It's not like, oh, guys can't cry or have their feelings is helpful or feels good to them, right? So it's like, so I think that Mars component right there with it, like square to it, is really, I think that's ultimately like one of the biggest structures and systems that we're getting an opportunity to really look at and shift and move back to that embracing of that divine feminine more in our culture, male and female, right? So it's like the earth, right? All of these things we're talking about, it's coming back into a reverence of that piece of ourselves that we've all been disconnected from, male or female.
Well, and that's a really great question if anybody wants to relate. I mean, I definitely have had stuff around father, issues. The way that I was raised, my mom was a single parent, and the brother that I grew up around wasn't the most supportive to me. So I felt very rejecting I've had stuff that I've worked on in the realm of men and relationships. And I just had my brother, a new brother, reach out to me right in April, right during COVID. It'd be very interesting to look at that alignment with that. Which planet was it that you were referring to?
Oh, with Mars being square to the right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So yeah, and I know other people that are working on stuff around relationships and relationships with men. And so, like, how were the men showing up in your life, whether you are a man or a woman watching this, you know? And is there some form of a patterning that you might be presented with at this time that you can relate to what Sheridan is saying?
Yeah. And then we're in this new Venus cycle, started almost at the same time as the Mars cycle started. And it's like in Gemini, which one of the biggest medicines of Gemini is like moving beyond polarity, right? So now we have the feminine aspect in there that wants to come back into union, right? So it's like all of these things where the Mars cycle started in Aries, which could be, you could almost call it sort of like the most stereotypical, like masculine type sign, like really black and white, right? Really like good and bad, right? So it's like the polarity sign and then the non-polarity sign and the feminine. And I just think it's fascinating to see. And, you know, we're seeing us butt up against so many of these like issues. It's almost like if anybody's ever read that book, The Heroine's Journey by, is it Maureen McClinton? I can't think of her last name, but it's like, it's almost like we're all collectively going on the heroine's journey now, where we separated from the feminine and we align with the masculine, right? Because it's the best way to survive and it's what's working. And then we start to be like, ooh, something's like missing. And then we start to come back to, oh, I want to connect with the feminine again. And then ultimately like marrying the masculine and feminine together into like an equality, right? It's kind of like that journey. And I feel like that's so much of what we're going on right now.
Yeah. And we've got Kimberly said I had to stop working. This is from the previous conversation. My ankles gave out, like my path was being shown. Walking in pain was not my path.
Wow.
Yeah. So she had to step away from the path that doesn't cause her pain. And yeah, and that's like back to the conversation with Jenna. If your body's not on board, neither is your soul, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And then Christine shares, amazing man entered my life 2 months ago. I intended to break old unhealthy relationship cycles and sought a healthy relationship. Her relationship with Josh is awesome. And then Kimberly also says, had a male boss picking on me, felt he had issues from his past he was working through and needed control. Not sure if this relates. It absolutely does, but it all happened last month. It absolutely does. Yes.
Yeah.
And that masculine piece is like, it's also about creating structure. It's about creating boundary, you know? And so even in that sense, Kimberly, it's like creating a healthy boundary for yourself and saying, that's not okay. You can't talk to me that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is so Saturn, right? That's so Saturn type thing as well. So, yeah, right in line. So it's pretty, yeah. I just think there's a huge opportunity this year, but I think it's very intense and we have to all really personally like do our work to come to rise to the occasion that the opportunity is providing, you know, which is so easy to say and so much harder to do. But yeah.
Oh my gosh. So we have Kimberly said, I created a boundary immediately. So there you go. You were forced to deal with the masculine. And then Beth Angus says, I also met an amazing man, my soulmate.
Oh, amazing.
So yes, I think there's a lot of us on this page that can really, and even if you're in a relationship, maybe you can see that topics or the patterns that are surfacing in your relationship are pertaining to these particular topics. And maybe the relationship is forcing you out, right? Maybe it's time for you to go somewhere else, or it's time for you to go even deeper and create more intimacy, create a different level, or redefine what the structure of your relationship looks like and what is going to be healthy for you.
Yeah, and empowering, right? Because that's what Pluto really wants to teach, is its initiation cycles are always to create much more empowerment, but there's work to get to that place. So yeah.
Yes. And Christine says, yay, Beth, that night I met Josh, my intuition kept screaming at me, Josh is my husband. Well, and I'll tell you, when I met, well, I've had numerous clairaudient experiences where when I met one gentleman who things did not turn out very well. He walked around the corner, and it was the first time I was meeting him. He was walking up towards me, and a voice in my head said, uh-oh, here we go again. And it was not good. Like, very, very tumultuous relationship, which he ended up taking his life. And then when I met, which was huge, I want to say, hugely pivotal to my life. And he was kind of like an angel for me. Like, it really made me turn inward, you know? So
wow.
It really made me turn inward and look at all the things that I wasn't really looking at. And then when I met my husband, a voice in my head said, you're going to marry that man. Literally. And that was like the first introduction we had. So,
wow.
Yeah. So it's, you guys, when you feel that connection with people, that's that frequency, that energy, we are like, 1% flesh and bones. We could just flip that idea. We've all been, given this idea around science that like, this is, hard. And it's not. There's more space between each one of the cells that make up our face and make up, our vocal cords than there are in real dense matter.
Totally.
So, and that's that back into the full circle of the intuition piece that we were talking about. When you align with it, then oh, I'm supposed to talk to you. I'm supposed to talk to Josh. You're supposed to be my husband.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of almost like, based on what you're saying, it's like, what are you filling the space with, right? What do you want to fill that space with? And yourself, your energy, your vibration, the earth, all of it. That's, yeah.
Exactly. And that kind of leads to the conversation of your amazing workshop that's happening next week.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm so excited. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring your charts. So if you signed up for it, and I sent Raven a link, so hopefully that'll come out in the email, but you can also get your chart like all kinds of places online for free. So we're going to look at our charts, like what is our soul's intent? What's our purpose? We're going to kind of go through the whole storyline of the chart. And then hopefully kind of break up into breakout rooms, so you can start to kind of like in a smaller group talk about like what it is for you individually, rather than just me talking constantly. And then we'll look at some of the plant spirit medicine that really like supports the different, signs and archetypes within your chart. So it's like Raven and I were just talking about our Leo rising, that it's the thing we're working on, right? So we could use certain plant medicines to like help support us and help us get closer to that vibration and fill this space with more of that Leo type energy, from the earth to help us, guide us and hold us in that space of what we're trying to create. So that's in a nutshell what we're going to do in the workshop. And I'm so excited. I think it's going to be so fun. So
I think it's going to be amazing. I'm so excited about it. And I want you to share and talk about these essential oils too with everybody before we hop off. And
okay.
why you're so passionate about this company.
Yeah, so obviously there's tons of different kinds of essential oils that you can get in the world, right? It's a big fad, it's a popular thing and has been for a while. And what I really like to do is work with I work with a company that's called Wisdom of the Earth, that is all about like creating a spiritual grade essential oil, right? So different ones depending upon like how much a lab is involved and how the plants are raised and how they're harvested and all these kinds of things, and whether they're adding things to it or subtracting things to make it be all the same. It impacts that vibrational component, which is the key piece of spiritual aromatherapy. So like, just using an example, even like in the meditation I led on Sunday, I talked about blue spruce, which I have here, is like one of my favorite ones. And you know, this company gets the blue spruce from this Native American tribe in Canada called the Abenaki tribe, and the wife is the medicine woman of the tribe. And so they have a portable still that they go into the forest and collect the plant matter and distill all in a drumming ceremony, right? So it's like on a whole different level than like buying some blue spruce from like a co-op somewhere that you don't know what happened, right? And then it's all hand poured in a ceremonial space. So you can just see how that keeps the vibration, right? If we're talking about, it's the essential oil is a conduit to work with the spirit and the medicine of the plant. The more it's ceremonial, collected, grown biodynamically, you know, all that kind of stuff, the more it keeps that spirit component, that vibrational component intact, rather than you start, you know, adding in a carrot oil, it's diluting it, or it's grown with chemicals, or you're putting chemicals in it, or, you know, that kind of thing. So that's what I do. So yeah, that's what I think.
So it just sounds like there's just so much more intentional ritual and like purpose behind everything that is done with this company. So
Yeah.
you would, it's like walking into a church that's been there to go pray for like hundreds of years. You can feel the energy of the prayers, like the thousands and thousands of prayers, as opposed to like walking into a Walgreens or a grocery store and like, I'm gonna go pray here.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Good analogy.
I love it. Christine Marie wants you to contact her. She would like to get a session.
Okay.
Her chart read from you. So if you guys are curious, we'll put Sheridan's information in the units, in the interview. You can also friend request her. Definitely sign up for her workshop and let us know if you guys have any other questions. Don't hesitate to reach out. You're not alone. I hope that you guys can all relate to both Sheridan and I's story and beginning of sharing our story with each and every one of you, and hope that you feel not weird, but normal by constantly pushing your insecurities, your feelings of fear and shame and doubt. And you know, those are all natural pieces of medicine to direct you to your higher path. So
totally. Yeah, completely. Keep going. Everybody keep going. Yeah.
Don't stop.
Yeah, don't stop. The rewards are so amazing. Yeah.
Yes. You are making an absolute purpose on this planet. And I've just decided no one is allowed anymore. I'm taking the right away from people to think that their life doesn't have a purpose or meaning. You're just not allowed. You're not allowed anymore.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. That's over. That's not an option on the menu anymore.
No, just as like somebody flicked a cigarette and started this massive fire that is 0% contained and it is affecting our entire valley. Everybody is flicking spiritual cigarettes all over the effing place. And we're done. We're done. Yeah. Everybody, it's time to clean up our street. It's obviously on purpose. You're on the road exactly according to your unfolding. So just pick up that cigarette, put it out, and let's run in together. Okay?
Yeah. Nice.
That's I'm done for the day on that one.
Yeah.
I'm sparked up right now. So
yeah.
All right, you guys. So share this post. If you share that, when you share this post, Sheridan will then pick one of your names out of the raffle, and you will then get to experience Sheridan's event this week or next. It's next week, right?
Next Friday.
Next
Yep.
Friday,
Yeah.
5:30 to 7:30 p.m. for free. And you guys, this content is worth hundreds of dollars that you are literally getting for pennies. It is there. I can't even stress that enough. So just know that when you get to walk in with Sheridan and be in her grace and her presence and learn, this is an invaluable experience.
Oh, thank you.
All right, you guys, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow. We've got our webinar from 5:30 to 7:30. We're going to start programming some oil to set your frequency to align with your soul's highest outcome. So hopefully we'll get Sheridan to join in with us and play around as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Let's go like that, right? To our star family.
Oops, sorry, I'm struggling there. Yeah. Yeah.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.